It wasn't the movies that showed us what war really meant. It wasn't the trilogies with their chosen ones and destinies fulfilled. It was something slower, something deeper, something animated, not in style, but in soul. This was the saga told from inside the storm, not above it. We saw names etched into armor that was never supposed to matter. We saw friendships forged between fire and orders. We saw Jedi bleed without wounds and clones rise without applause. It was never just battles, it was burdens. It was the kind of story that whispered instead of shouted, and still hit harder than anything that came before. It gave voice to the forgotten, to the soldiers who were born to obey, but learned to question, to the warriors who didn't wear capes or wield legends, but still changed everything. Every frame a quiet revolution. Every line a step towards something more real than myth. There was poetry in the pauses, in the looks exchanged before the blade dropped, in the seconds before betrayal, and in the silence after. There was heartbreak in the rhythm, in the way a character walked away, in the way a brother never came back. And still, it kept going. The Clone Wars didn't demand your belief, it earned it. Through honesty, through sorrow, through the kind of character work that made icons out of outcasts. And when it finally ended, it didn't fade. It echoed through timelines, through fans, through the truth that Star Wars was never just about heroes. It was about choices. In this video, we dive into the series that completed the saga without needing a silver screen. We explore how the Clone Wars became the trilogy that should have been, through emotion, through brotherhood, through tragedy, through the lens of those who never got to be legends, but carried the war all the same. There was a war they never showed us in full, not on the big screen, not in polished trilogies or perfect arcs, but buried in 7 seasons of pain, loyalty, and loss. The Clone Wars was not a spin-off. It was the spine, the story that gave everything else its weight. Between the flashy duels and whispered destinies, this was the saga where characters breathed, where clones had names, where Jedi made mistakes they couldn't fix. It was not about chosen ones or bloodlines. It was about brothers, about soldiers, about the cracks that formed while the galaxy watched stars burn. Every episode was a window into consequence, not spectacle, not legend, but consequence. It showed what war felt like on the ground, what trust looked like when orders conflicted with conscience, what betrayal sounded like in the quiet moments between missions. This was not background noise. This was the truth. It expanded Star Wars without rewriting it, deepened it without denying it, made Anakin more than anger, made Padma more than love, made Obi-Wan more than duty. And through it all, it gave the clones something the films never did: humanity. The Clone Wars was never just a show. It was the trilogy that filled the silence between scenes, the chapters between battles, the scars beneath the armor. And for many of us, it was the moment Star Wars finally felt complete. They gave us 3 prequels and barely scratched the surface. They told us there was a war and then moved on, showed Jedi on council chairs and droids on battlegrounds. But they never told us what it felt like to be caught in between. They never told us who the clones really were. Clone after clone died, nameless, faceless, voiceless. They were numbers to the audience, just like they were to the Republic. But the Clone Wars broke that lie. It gave them stories. It gave them sorrow. It gave them choices. And once you heard their voices, you could never unhear them. The films made the war look clean, strategized, contained. But the show painted it raw, messy, endless. Every victory cost more than it gave. Every decision left a scar. It showed Jedi cracking under pressure and soldiers wondering if they were even fighting for the right side. There was no glory in these battles. Just exhaustion. Just doubt. Just the weight of doing what had to be done and not knowing if it mattered. That's what war is. That's what they hid from the trilogy. But Clone Wars dared to stare directly into it. The frustration isn't that it existed. The frustration is that it was hidden, tucked behind live-action shadows and theatrical polish. But now it's out, and now that we've seen it, there's no pretending the movies told the full story. There was no happy ending for the clones. No medals, no fanfare, no peace. They were created to die, trained to obey, conditioned to disappear the second their purpose ended. And when that day came, no one looked back. The Clone Wars let us live inside their tragedy. From brothers lost in ambushes to friendships torn by protocol, every arc pulled back the curtain. Every death felt personal. They weren't cannon fodder anymore. They were family. And when they fell, we felt it. The Jedi were supposed to be their leaders, but often they were just another kind of command, another kind of silence. Only a few ever truly saw the clones as equals, as people. And that made the betrayals more haunting. Because when Order 66 came, it wasn't just programming. It was heartbreak. We saw them question, saw them cry, saw them break in ways no film ever dared to show. We watched men built for war, yearn for meaning, for identity, for more. And the tragedy is not just that many never got it, it's that they almost did. The Clone Wars is sorrow, not in melodrama, but in memory, in the lingering ache that these lives mattered, and were erased anyway. And somehow, that makes it the most human Star Wars ever told. There were moments in Clone Wars that reached beyond animation, beyond canon, moments that felt sacred. Ahsoka standing with sabers ignited under Mandalore's sky, Rex removing his helmet as tears welled in his eyes, Maul begging for chaos to end, and Anakin still smiling, not knowing what was coming. This show didn't just build arcs, it sculpted them, with music that ached, with visuals that bled weight, with dialogue that resonated deeper than many scenes with real faces. It captured the poetry of Star Wars, but grounded it in choices and consequence. Anakin Skywalker became a character you mourned before his fall, because Clone Wars gave you time to know him, to see him love, laugh, command, break. It made the transformation into Vader feel inevitable and unbearable. We met new heroes and fell in love with them. Ahsoka Tano wasn't born iconic. She became it, week by week, line by line. Until she wasn't just part of Star Wars, she was Star Wars, and her journey became one of the saga's most powerful stories. Clone Wars created AW, not by scale, but by sincerity. It made each frame matter, each beat echo, and in that effort, it outshined what many thought was untouchable. Even in war, even in betrayal, Clone Wars held on to something rare. Hope it didn't drown in its darkness. It swam through it, carved light out of loss, found loyalty in ashes, and gave even the most broken souls a chance to rise. The clones found strength in each other, in names they gave themselves, in identities built from survival. They joked, they argued, they believed. And that belief kept the galaxy from falling apart far sooner. Ahsoka walked away from the Jedi, and instead of losing her purpose, she found her voice. Her path was carved not by tradition, but by truth, and her refusal to hate became its own rebellion, a quiet one, a lasting one. We saw arcs end in silence, but others soared. Echo Fives. Rex, they didn't fade. They fought to be remembered, to be more, and in doing so, they became a reflection of us, trying to matter in a world that rarely notices. The Clone Wars didn't promise happy endings, but it promised meaning. And in Star Wars, sometimes that's the most hopeful thing of all. The Clone Wars was never meant to be the center of Star Wars. It was meant to be background, a footnote, a gap filler. But what it became was the very soul of the galaxy. It gave us the truth behind the battles, the silence between victories, the blood beneath the banners, and through animation and voice, through music and timing, it did what trilogies could not. It made us feel it. The tragedy is that most of these heroes were never meant to live long enough to be remembered. The triumph is that we remembered them anyway, through edits, through episodes, through the ache in our chests when the credits rolled. It was not about good and evil, not really. It was about choice, about what you do when the orders feel wrong, about who you are when no one's watching. And for the clones, that question was everything. The Clone Wars was the real Star Wars trilogy, not because it was cleaner or cooler or canonically complete, but because it dared to show the war beneath the myth and the people who fought it.